Hi everyone, it's that time of year when my Korean skincare routine is back on sale for up to 45% off. Free international shipping. It's going on for 1 month. Don't miss out because remember, we're not doing it again until November. Hello friends and family, this is Megan Moon, aka Charlotte 미국 사람입니다. And I am back with another sit down and talk video. It's been forever. Also, we don't have cameraman Mr. Rich, so I'm just on my iPhone, so the quality might not be that good. My bad, but I'm here. So Korea can be quite depressing sometimes. I'm sure it wouldn't come to any shock to you guys because you know that Korea is the #1 most depressed nation out of all the OECD nations. It's, I believe, #1 with the amount of people who decide to take their own lives because of it. And I do feel like the longer and deeper you kind of get into Korean society, the more and more you start to see it. You guys know I've been in Korea since February of 2012, so it's been a little over 12 years now. And I've had so many people around me who are impacted by it. I've been impacted by it at certain times in my stay here, and I know several people whose close loved ones decided to take their own lives because they just were hopeless in life. And it's something that's really, really sad to see. And I usually don't talk about these sort of sad topics, but I kind of wanted to bring up some stuff because I feel like when the government kind of talks about it or there's like news reports about it, I feel like it tends to be more superficial and doesn't go into a lot of detail. They might say stuff like housing is expensive or it's competitive to get into schools, people can't get the jobs that they want. And of course, those social pressure, and of course, those things are things that can contribute to people feeling depressed. However, I think there's more deep things that are contributing to it. And of course, it's a multifaceted issue and nobody can know the sole one most important thing that's causing it. But I do think that one of the biggest things that contributes to people feeling depressed and whatnot is just a lack of real closeness in their family relationships. I mean, because think about it, even if, you know, the cost of living is high or if you didn't do as well on the test that you wanted or didn't get that job promotion that you wanted, if you knew that at the end of the day you would go home, there are people who understood you, who you were emotionally close to, who would pat you on the back and say, you know what, it's okay. We'll find you another job tomorrow, who really just supported you and were positive influences in your life, you'd be much less likely to be depressed. And we know scientifically that having deep interpersonal relationships, people who you feel like understand you, who love you, who you can rely on, actually helps prevent depression and people wanting to take their own lives. I think on the surface in Korea, a lot of people, family. We gotta do this for family, do that for family. Like there's a lot of talk about families, so you would think that families would be super close. But actually a report came out and they interviewed like tens of thousands of people across like 19 different countries. And people just ranked the things that were most important or most valuable to them in their lives. 18 out of the 19 countries all said that family and, you know, those close relationships, those close ties are the most important thing in their lives. But only one country said that material well-being was most important, and that was South Korea. And if you've been here for any amount of time, you will know that there's a lot of materialism going on. Of course, materialism kind of comes with the territory of a capitalist society, but people here feel so much pressure that they need to have this car or this expensive purse or live in this neighborhood and this and that and this. There's a lot more pressure that people put on themselves and on each other to have material things. And the longer I'm here and the more I interact with people and their families and things like that, you really start to see that for a lot of the families here, they're not really emotional families so much as functional family. It's like, okay, family's supposed to meet up this often. I'm supposed to do this for you, do that for you. We got to do this thing for our ancestors and do this and that. It's sort of like a checklist that people have and they're checking off of it, but their heart and mind is not really in it. I've seen for a lot of people. And I've heard from a lot of Korean people too, like when they go visit their foreign friends' family and they see how the family interacts with one another, they like actually get along, like each other. And even Moon, when he first met my family, he was like, oh, your family like gets along, like everybody likes each other, like they're having a good time, like they want to be there. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of how family is. And even my mother-in-law, when my family came to Korea for our 상경례, which is the meeting that both sides of the family had before marriage, and me and my family were talking, getting along, having fun, and my mom-in-law was just sitting there like, oh, you guys really have a lot of fun together. That's no wonder you seem so bored when you're hanging out with our family.
My Korean skincare routine contains 4 items. Let's start with
Green tea enzymatic powder wash. It contains green tea powder. It smells like a delectable green tea latte. Makes you want to eat it. Don't eat it though, it's quite bitter. Which is great at exfoliating the pores. It's been clinically proven to deep clean the pores by 96.89%. It's a very gentle exfoliator, so it doesn't strip your skin of all its natural oil. It really does help to smooth out the skin texture. I am from Rice Toner. It contains 77.78% rice extract. It performs a protective barrier over the skin to help replenish the moisture and help your natural skin barrier to become better. And it helps to soothe the flaky, dead skin cells that you have. Freshly juiced vitamin C drops, and you guys know vitamin C is a thing I use every day. If I'm half dead and I don't feel like washing my face, and I splash water, put some vitamin C, and then go to sleep. I think that's one of the reasons why my skin has stayed so youthful all over these years. Plus, I do visit the Korean dermatology clinic and get skin treatment sometimes, but girl, vitamin C. Overall, it helps you to enjoy a brighter and more even skin tone. The main reason why I love it also is it helps to minimize the appearance of pores. It even helps to even out any skin pigmentation issues you have or acne scars. And its antioxidant effects help to boost the production of collagen in your skin, so it's also very anti-aging as well. Lastly, I'll go in with my vitamin E mask. Vitamin E is very anti-aging, so it helps to reduce the appearance of fine wrinkles. It helps to provide brighter, firmer, and more hydrated skin. You can use it as a sleeping pack or a daily moisturizer. I also like that it has a really pudding texture. Boop, 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 boop. It jiggles.
Get your Korean skincare routine today. Don't miss out on 45% off and free international shipping. Link down below.
But it's so sad. One thing that I've seen and noted here, for example, for me, family are the people that I can talk to about anything. If I'm just, something's on my mind, I can just be like, oh my God, this is this. And then I feel support and love. I feel I can talk and share anything. It's like a stress relief to talk to my family. I feel better, uplifted, if we're talking and spending time together. But in Korea, I heard for a lot of people, and I've seen for a lot of people that it's the opposite. It causes stress, kind of makes them feel down. Like it's sort of negative relationship as opposed to being positive and uplifting. And of course, not every single family is like that, but I've heard that there are so many families like that. And I was actually really curious because, I have 2 kids here, and I've just seen in general in society, there could be a lot of negative thinking from people, and interactions that a lot of people have tend to be a lot more negative. And so I kind of wanted to find ways to make sure that Luna and Ruben, maybe don't get impacted by it. So I actually started reading some books about certain family dynamics and stuff. These are my top 3. But this book is called 가족이라는 착각, and in English you would say the mistaken family. What you think family is, you're mistaken. You're mistaken about family. Basically, what you think is family is not. This book really goes through certain aspects of Korean culture and things in Korean society that negatively impact people. It was really interesting, and I saw so many things in here. It explained a lot. So I thought I would share maybe a few reasons as to how the old traditional culture is sort of getting in the way of people actually having close emotional intimacy in their relationships today. Now remember, I'm not a professional. I'm just a gal who lives here, who's read some books, watched some lectures, experienced Korean family things for herself, and talked to a lot of people over the years, right? So I'm not a professional. It's just my opinion. It's just us gals sat here talking in front of the camera. This is not law. This is just my opinion. I think the biggest thing that's keeping people from this generation from actually connecting with their parents is just the generational gap. The previous generation of people, my in-law age people, they were born right after the Korean War, when Korea was not that developed and was still a farming society. So the cultural difference between one generation ago and the current generation is probably 200 or 300 years, it feels like. So even just having a conversation, sometimes it's hard. It feels like you got in a time machine and you're talking to somebody from a totally different era. Another thing from that era that I think is really hindering the relationships is just the fact that you have to respect elders. And I don't think it's a bad thing to have to respect elders. I think it's a good thing. They're old, they should get some kind of respect. But the way that it is here is that a lot of the elders don't respect people. That old culture is very much rankings culture. I'm this ranking, so I don't really have to respect you, but you have to respect me. And just one of the basic things that allows for communication and actual emotional intimacy in relationship is both people respecting each other. So whether you're a parent or not, you still have to respect your kid. It doesn't mean that you don't discipline them and let them do whatever they want. But there's just a certain level of respect that you have for them, as a person that does have their own thing going for them. So a lot of the older generation, the parents don't respect boundaries. Even if you're out and you're married and you're hey, don't show up at our house without calling or something like that. They still gonna come because they don't think that they need to respect you in that way. And a lot of the younger generation were taught that you shouldn't speak up to old people, even if they're doing something that you don't like. So a lot of people are too afraid to sort of assert themselves and create that boundary. And a lot of the parents can get very vocal and like really angry if you do try and assert some sort of boundary with them. And because of that, a lot of people have said, you know, when they were young, you know, if they had things that were bothering them or they were worried about and they went to their parents to talk to them about, they didn't really receive any sort of compassion or encouragement. They sort of received negative feedback from their parents. And a lot of people, if they speak up about something that their parents are doing that make them feel uncomfortable, etc., then the parents will sort of guilt trip them by saying, hey, you know, we raised you, you need to respect us. So a lot of people feel like by even having their own opinion outside of their parents' opinion that they're being a bad son or a daughter. So they sort of learn to just keep quiet, not say anything, to keep their emotions inside, because there are some parents who will get angry anytime you try and share, you know, how you feel about something, etc. And I was talking to Moon about this, and then actually there is this person, his name is Kim Chang-wook, and he makes a lot of like videos talking about psychology online. And he made a video and it was like 잘하자 versus, you know, 즐기자. And he was just talking about like the differences between like how Koreans and like certain Western people think in certain situations. But one of the situations that he brought up was like, he was watching a movie and he was like this American kid, I guess. And this like American kid like fell and hurt himself or something. And so the mom came over and was like, oh my God, you know, are you okay? And just checking on you. Oh, I hope that you're okay, you know. But he was like, but how Korean moms do, like just kind of like get mad and sort of like, well, you shouldn't be over there. Like that sort of thing, that lack of sort of compassion, he said, causes a lot of Korean people to be very negative. And when bad things do happen to them, I feel like it tends to impact them more. Because one of the things that I said in the video was whenever you're young, when something bad happens, however your closest people reacted. So if your parents reacted, it's like, okay, are you okay? You know, everything's okay. And then when you're an adult and bad things happen, that tends to be the attitude that you have. You're like, okay, well, let's say I got in a car accident. At least I have my life, right? So that's something. It was like, if you grew up in a way where something bad happens to you and people say negative things to you, then as an adult, when bad things happen, you tend to receive it more negatively. That aspect of parenting where a lot of parents tend to react negatively when things happen puts people in situations that when they're adults and they can't reach all of their goals or they don't get everything that they want, that they tend to react more negatively, and it tends to shift their whole world a lot more. And another thing that really causes a lot of issues for people when they grow up is just like comparing their kid to the neighbor's kid to everyone else's kid. Every psychology book talks about, and Pomyun Sunnim in this book I really liked, it's called Oma Suop, which is like Oma's class or mom's class. It's written by a monk, Pomyun Sunnim. He's a monk, but he wrote a really good book about mothers, even though he's not married and don't have no kids. It's actually really good because he did study psychology. But in this book, he talks about comparing too, and he talks about how, you know, a good mother's heart is you don't compare your kids to other people. You accept their kids for how you are. And of course, you teach them and help them to go on their path in life. But comparing them and having that standard of other people around you really impacts the kids' like self-esteem and actually has a negative impact on them instead of positive. Like the elders always compare kids, like so-and-so's neighbor's kid is doing this, why aren't you doing that? And this grandkid can walk already, why can't your kid walk already? Like it's a lot of like comparing people, and it's stressful for me sometimes, and I'm not even like a kid, like I'm an adult, and I'm like, wow guys, like why are we comparing people like this and like talking shit about somebody because they can't do something like someone else can? But it's such a huge comparing culture, and I think that's why in society people continue to compare each other to other people. It's typically always on the negative end, right? Like if you do something better than the neighbor, the parents won't say to you, oh, good job, you're better than the neighbor kid. It's always only the things that you can't do. So a lot of people feel a lot of self-conscious about the things that they can't do. So I think they want to get out and do better than the next man so that they can receive some sort of positive praise. The next thing that really hinders closeness in the family units is this notion called 효도. So that is you having to pay back your parents for raising you. And it was apparently a big thing, like in the previous generation. They like hounded it into the people of this generation now's skulls that they need to pay their parents back for raising them. And the things that they require for you to pay them back, number one, is to do everything that they say, even in adulthood. And so a lot of people are made to feel guilty if they want to do their own thing or have a job that their parents don't want for them. They'll say, hey, I raised you, so you owe me. You need to do what I say. You belong to me. Also, they expect to be repaid with having a certain amount of money sent to them every month. And some parents are very vocal. They will say how much money they need to send, like this, how much money you're gonna have to send me every month. And it just feels very transactional. Some parents also require that you go see them every certain interval. I've heard stories of parents that require that even after their kids get married, that they go visit them every week. We both work, like we're tired every weekend, like we don't want to go there. Those are the really like crazy ones. And I'm like, wow, that is a lot. But there are some parents who can be very demanding, I heard. Especially the ones that require calls. Like there are some parents that require like a couple calls a week. And if you don't call them, then they'll complain. And it's a big issue for certain people in marriage, because after marriage, that sort of falls on the wife. And so like the mother-in-law will require that the wife call every once in a while, and then if not, like she could get upset. But it's sort of this thing where the older generation is just anxious. It's like, okay, well, my kid is married now, so they could leave and like not call me ever again. So they constantly need confirmation that you still respect me and that you're still here. That is a very real thing. That causes a lot of stress in people's marriage. But you have to also think about what it does to kids. Like if you're a kid and you grow up hearing that your parents raising you needs to be paid back, that's a huge burden. Like you can't pay back someone giving you life. One of the things that Pomyun Sanim, the monk, says, like online, he says all the time, is like, you don't pay back your parents birthing you and raising you by focusing on them. You pay that back to the next generation. It's like one of those things that's paid forward. You were born and raised, so then you raise another generation. Everything is about keeping the life going. But if you grow up feeling like you don't have unconditional love from your parents, and you being there is something that's needs to be paid back, then that causes a tremendous impact on people's self-esteem. And it causes a lot of people a lot of guilt, I've heard. One of the biggest things that a lot of people talk about, and that is talked about actually in this book, and that I've been seeing a lot online these days, is like the previous generation's sort of marriage relationship is not that good. So a lot of people were just kind of in the marriage because they had kids, but they would actually verbalize that and say that to their kids. Like, hey, I'm in this marriage with your dad. I have to be with your dad because of you. Okay. So they grow up just feeling guilty for even just existing. A lot of people. And so even though this generation knows that that's not good or healthy, when you grow up feeling guilty about just existing, and you've sort of been pushed to think that you owe your life to your parents in that sense. Obviously, if it wasn't for your parents, you wouldn't be here. But that you need to pay back them for raising you, like that's a very big burden to bear, especially because we're no longer a farming society. The cost of living and stuff is expensive. So to think that you have that burden of having to send your parents money every month, etc., is very difficult. There's this one, how on YouTube, like you have a channel that you see, but you haven't actually subscribed to, but you see a lot of their videos and you might watch them all the way through, but you just don't subscribe because YouTube recommends it to you anyway. So there's a YouTuber like that, a Korean guy, who talks about finances, and then people call in. So this one man called in and was like, in order to meet my parents, the amount of money they say I should send them every month, like I'm living like a pauper, right? Like I'm living in just this little one room. I'm just eating like ramen. And so the finance guy like had to talk him through it and be like, okay, I know this is what your parents expect, but we have to prepare for our old age. Young people know what their parents are doing, expecting their kids to take care of them in young age, that they don't want their kids to have the burden of having to take care of them in old age. So they're trying to save up money for their future. But if you're trying to save up money for your future, when the cost of living is high, but then also you have to send money to your parents, that causes a lot of stress. So a lot of people get stressed out about not having jobs that pay a super lot of money because they feel like they can't prepare for their future and take care of their kids while also, sending money to their parents. So because of that, a lot of people really like the relationship they have with their parents is just sort of functional and transactional. It's like a checklist. Like, okay, I have to meet them every so often. I have to send them X amount of money. I have to see them on the holidays. I have to call them X amount. But then actually a lot of people's heart is not really there. They don't really like being around them because they feel anxious or guilty. They can't really have a conversation with them, right? And there's a lot of like trauma and hurt that a lot of people have like from their parents, but they feel like they're a bad son or a bad daughter, if they don't do the things that their parents ask of them. And I think that puts so much stress on people. That on top of how competitive society is, I think it's enough to drive you over the edge. So as a result of that, like when you were small and people didn't really give you compassion, a lot of people say that in their friendships, when you do want to open up to certain friends, it can be hard also because some people don't really want to hear that. And I've actually experienced that, like in Korea, like meeting people and then going to go talk to them, like sharing some like deep down thing inside. I've had someone be like, I don't want to hear your stuff. I got my own stuff. And then I've heard like Korean people complain about it and other foreign people as well. But when you're already overloaded with like mental stuff and you feel like you have nobody to talk to and then someone throws their stuff on you, obviously it's going to be hard for you to accept that. Just amongst friends, I heard that it's really hard to find people that you can actually talk with and have a relationship with on a deep level. And I've experienced that myself, like making friends. So if you do find a good friend here and you both could talk about everything and comfort one another and understand each other, hold on to them, okay? Because a lot of friendships here I've seen are also very functional. It's like a checklist, right? Okay, you make X amount of money, you have this, you have that. Okay, we can hang out. It's the vibe that I get. Of course, every single person is not like that, but there's a lot of that going on. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about that I think is really messing up relationships, especially between adult children. A lot of parents seem to have separation anxiety when their kids grow up and them like being independent and leaving their house, especially the moms. In the previous generation, the marriage, as we discussed already, the marriages weren't actually that good. So a lot of the moms sort of latch onto their sons like husbands. Like emotionally, they're relying on their son like a husband. So when he leaves the house and gets married, they get very anxious, some of them. So without realizing it, they actually do things to keep their kids from growing up. So as a result, when they're adults, they don't really know how to handle life by themselves, but their parents are very anxious that they're like an adult and are like leaving them now, especially the moms. And so that's why they get really like upset sometimes, like when their kids leave, they're calling like every day and like, what did you eat? Did you do this? You need me to do your laundry? You need me to get you some side dishes? You need some kimchi? You need this? You need that? It's like, it can be very obsessive. That's sort of how you get that notion of like crazy mother-in-law. It comes from that whole, me and my husband aren't like super duper close. And so like I've sort of bonded onto my son. He's my son husband. And so they get very, very clingy when he goes off and gets married. Oh my God, there's some crazy stories that I heard on YouTube. We should have a video where I just tell you the craziest mom-in-law stories that people have shared on YouTube or have been on TV, or like some people who've called into like Pumyun Sunim to share their stories. I'm just like, how do people live like this? But anyway, back on topic. When you're an adult and your parents are sort of coddling you overly, it causes stress. So a lot of people are very stressed when their mom is calling them all the time and trying to like show up at their house and bring them side dishes and stuff like that. And when you really think about it, it sort of feels like they have no faith in you, that you can live on your own. So it causes a lot of anger in people. And I've sort of like felt this like myself. Whenever you're doing something, sometimes a lot of older Korean people will be like, oh, you can't do that. Would you need me to help? And so there's this overarching feeling that they just don't trust that you can do anything by yourself sometimes. Because in the basis of it, if there's no respect or sort of faith that or trust that that person can handle their own business, then it really makes it hard to have a good relationship with that person, right? Anywho, I feel like I have talked a lot, but I thought, why not just sit around and talk about stuff that I've been kind of really interested in learning and looking at these days and reading books. Like I'm actually not finished with this book, so I don't know, maybe I'm only halfway through this one, but maybe there will be some other things that pop up. This is a good book too if you're somebody who speaks Korean and you live in Korea. It's by somebody called Lee Ju-eun. She's like a psychologist and she has a book, what is it? 결혼은 잘못이 없어. And she just talks about some things that she noticed like in Korean society that people sort of need, you know, in marriages to sort of make them better. It's really interesting. I also feel like after you have kids, you really start looking at things that you didn't pay attention to before, right? So maybe a lot of negative interactions that I might have had with people in Korean society before, I'm like, you know, I'm already an adult. I can kind of see it and be like, well, that was negative, moving on. But I'm like, no, wait a minute. Now, if my kids are experiencing this on a regular basis, how's it going to impact them? So I've really just been scouring the internet and looking at so much psychology content. And it's helped to shed light on a lot of stuff that I have been kind of seeing and feeling like in society too. I was like, oh, that's why people do that. Anyway, I ramble on. Make sure you don't miss out on my Korean skincare sale. There's only a few days left. All the information will be down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, can see more videos, please subscribe to my YouTube page, which is down below. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Zone. You said no more. Follow me on TikTok because I started making really fun TikToks. And I will see ya.